a developing tropical low in the Coral Sea, flooding concerns across northwestern Queensland, and the remnants of tropical Cyclone Koji heading back towards the top end. That S, what we're retracking over the next week to 10 days. I've examined the latest from the Bureau of Meteorology, the forecast models, and the current satellite imagery. There is a fair bit to unpack here, particularly for northern Queensland and the Northern Territory. Multiple systems in play, some clarity on what S likely, some uncertainty on what happens beyond Australia Day. Let S start with what S happening right now, because the current situation sets the stage for everything that follows. The remnants of ex-tropical Cyclone Koji are still active across northwestern Queensland. The system made landfall on the central Queensland coast earlier this week, near Mackay, with significant winds and heavy rain. Since then, it has been tracking northwest across the interior, and at S bringing more rain to areas that frankly don't need it. Throughout today, we've seen persistent thunderstorms north of Mount Isa. Nothing extreme in terms of individual totals, most areas picking up 30 to 80 millimetres, but when you've already got saturated ground and rivers running high, even 50 millimetres matters. The flooding situation across northwestern Queensland remains serious. Water levels that were just starting to drop are now rising again with this latest rainfall. The Flinders River system, the Norman River catchments, still dealing with major flood warnings in several locations. I want to show you what this looks like on the ground. The Blackwater crossing near Doomadgee. Normally there's a road running through there. Right now it's completely underwater, trees submerged. A Land Cruiser that went through a few days ago was up to its bonnet. That's the scale of water we're dealing with. Further south near Rockhampton, moderate flooding is developing along the Fitzroy River system, water levels rising as runoff from the interior makes its way downstream. The central Queensland coast has copped widespread rain over the past week, some areas picking up over 180 millimetres in 4 days. The good news is the low-pressure system associated with Koji S remnants is moving quickly northwest. By Thursday, the shower and thunderstorm activity should ease across the Mount Isa region. Friday and into the weekend, rainfall becomes more coastal-based. Isolated afternoon storms, nothing widespread. That gives the inland river systems time to drain. But here is where it gets complicated. Those remnants of Koji are heading towards the Northern Territory, and when they interact with the monsoon trough this weekend, Darwin and the top end are in for significant rainfall. The forecast models are showing 4-day rainfall totals between 600 and 700 millimetres across parts of the Adelaide River catchment out towards Bachelor and south of Darwin. That's a massive amount of rain in a short period. Now, to be clear, the top end can handle heavy rainfall. This time of year, it is the wet season. Infrastructure is designed for it, but 600 mils in 4 days will still cause localised flooding. Watch and act warnings likely. Roads cut, creeks and rivers rising quickly. The remnants of Koji have a reasonable chance of redeveloping into a tropical low once they reach the warm waters of the Timor Sea. Sea surface temperatures up there are sitting around 30 to 31 degrees, plenty of energy available, light wind shear, conditions favour development. Darwin, you are looking at least 100 millimetres this weekend, Saturday through Monday, heavy rain at times, thunderstorms embedded. The exact location of the heaviest falls is still uncertain. Could shift southwest towards the Kimberley, could shift southeast back towards the Gulf of Carpentaria, but the top end is locked in for significant rainfall regardless. After that system stalls near Darwin for a few days, early next week, the steering flow becomes uncertain. Two possibilities: either it tracks west into the Indian Ocean towards the Kimberley region, or it makes a U-turn back towards Queensland and the Gulf of Carpentaria. Based on current steering patterns and the strength of the monsoon trough, I'd lean towards the Queensland option. But that S, reading the tea leaves at this range, the models aren't in agreement yet. We'll have better clarity by Friday or Saturday. Now let's talk about the Coral Sea, because there is a separate system developing out there, Tropical Low 14U. This system is currently located about 1,500 kilometres northeast of Rockhampton, well offshore, tracking east-northeast towards Vanuatu. By this weekend, it gets jammed up near Vanuatu, turns back towards New Caledonia, and that S where tropical cyclone genesis becomes possible. The Bureau S outlook suggests this could develop into a weak tropical cyclone between Monday the 19th and Wednesday the 21st of January. If it does, New Caledonia is looking at heavy rainfall and strong winds. Category 1 or 2 intensity. Not a major system, but significant for them. For Queensland, this system is not a concern. It stays well offshore. The upper level jet stream across the Tasman Sea is still relatively strong. That S acting as a barrier, preventing tropical systems from tracking too far south. It is the same pattern that kept most cyclones away from Queensland earlier this season. Tropical Cyclone Koji was unusual in that regard. It came much further south than we typically see in mid-January. Normally, Queensland's main cyclone risk doesn't ramp up until February onwards. Koji took advantage of a temporary weakening in the jet stream. That window has mostly closed again. So tropical low 14U in the Coral Sea. Impacts on Queensland are unlikely. It is one to watch if you have interest in New Caledonia or Vanuatu. For Australia, it's background noise. But here where the longer range outlook gets interesting. Between the 20th and 25th of January, roughly around Australia Day, multiple areas of tropical development are possible. First, another low pressure system is likely to develop over the Coral Sea. This would be separate from 14U, a new system forming closer to the Queensland coast, possibly associated with the monsoon trough extending eastward. Second, a tropical low is likely to develop off the Western Australian coast, possibly in the Browse Basin or towards the Pilbara. And third, those remnants of Koji could still be active, either as a system near the Kimberley or back over the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, I need to be clear about something. When we're re-looking at forecasts 7 to 12 days out, uncertainty is high. These systems might develop, they might not. The timing could shift by several days. The locations could be hundreds of kilometres different. What I can tell you with more confidence is this. Northern Australia is entering an active tropical period. The monsoon trough is strengthening. Sea surface temperatures are well above average. Moisture levels are high. These are the ingredients for tropical low development and heavy rainfall. For far north Queensland specifically, between now and the end of January, you are looking at an increased chance of heavy rainfall. Not from a tropical cyclone necessarily, more likely from a broad monsoon low or a rainfall depression. Widespread falls of 100 to 200 millimetres possible over several days. Isolated areas copping more. The good news is the forecast models are not indicating tropical cyclone development over northern Queensland through the remainder of January. That doesn't mean it can't happen. Tropical systems can intensify quickly when conditions align, but right now it's not showing up in the data. The monsoon pattern we read in typically favours widespread rainfall rather than concentrated cyclonic systems. When the monsoon trough is this active, it often suppresses cyclone formation. You get low pressure systems, heavy rain, thunderstorms, but not the tight circulation needed for a cyclone. That said, monsoon lows can occasionally intensify into tropical cyclones. It's not common, but it happens. So this is something I'll be monitoring closely over the next week. Now let's talk about February, because there are some signals in the longer range models that warrant attention. Early February, possibly the first or second week, the Coral Sea is showing potential for tropical cyclone development closer to the Queensland coast. This is still well outside the reliable forecast range. Things will change, but it's worth keeping on your radar. If you are in far north Queensland or you have family, mates, property up there, just be aware that February typically marks the start of Queensland's main cyclone season. That S when the jet stream weakens further south. That S when systems have a clearer path towards the coast. We're not under any watches or warnings for cyclone impacts right now, but February onwards, that S when you want to make sure your cyclone plan is sorted, supplies stocked, property secured, know your evacuation routes if you're in a storm surge zone. Right, let's bring this back to the practical stuff. What do you need to know for the next week? If you are in northwestern Queensland, particularly around Mount Isa, Cloncurry, the Gulf Country, the heavy rain is easing. By Friday, back to isolated afternoon storms. That gives the river systems time to drop. But stay across the flood warnings from the Bureau. Water levels can rise again quickly if another system moves through. For those in the Flinders and Norman River catchments, major flooding is still occurring. Roads cut, some properties isolated. If you're replanning travel through that region, check road conditions before you leave. Queensland Traffic has good updates on their website. Don't attempt to cross flooded roads. If it's flooded, forget it. Central Queensland coast, particularly around Rockhampton and Gladstone, moderate flooding developing along the Fitzroy. Water levels peaked in some areas but still elevated. Another few days before things return to normal. Keep an eye on the bomb flood warnings for your specific area. For Darwin and the top end, prepare for heavy rainfall this weekend. Saturday through Monday, at least 100 millimetres, possibly much more depending on where the low tracks. Stock up on essentials before Saturday. Charge devices, make sure your emergency kit is ready. If you're in low-lying areas prone to flooding, have a plan to relocate if needed. This isn't a cyclone threat for Darwin at this stage, but heavy rainfall can still cause significant disruption. Localised flooding, roads cut, power outages if storms are severe. Just be prepared for a wet weekend. Far North Queensland from Cairns north to Cape York, you are looking at increased rainfall chances from around the 22nd onwards. Nothing imminent, but the monsoon trough is strengthening. When that Coral Sea system develops, if it develops, you will see widespread rain and thunderstorms, heavy falls possible. We'll have better clarity on this by early next week. One thing I want to emphasise, despite all this tropical activity, cyclone chances across Australia over the next 10 days are actually quite low. The strong monsoon pattern tends to suppress cyclone formation. You get lows, you get heavy rain, but not necessarily cyclones. That could change. Monsoon lows can intensify, but right now, the data doesn't support expecting a tropical cyclone impact anywhere in Australia before the end of January. For Western Australia, particularly the Kimberley and Pilbara, there is potential for tropical low development late next week. Around the 24th, 25th, this would bring heavy rainfall to the northwest coast, but again, still uncertain. The models are showing it, but confidence is low at this range. If you're replanning to travel across northern Australia over the Australia Day long weekend, keep a close eye on the weather. Conditions can change quickly. Roads that are open today might be cut tomorrow. Have alternative routes planned. Carry extra supplies, satellite phone or EPIRB if you are heading remote. For livestock owners across the north, particularly in areas that have already seen heavy rain, monitor your paddocks for flooding. Stock in low-lying areas might need moving. Water quality can deteriorate quickly after heavy rainfall events. Keep an eye on that. Look, the next 10 days across northern Australia are going to be unsettled. That's the reality of the monsoon season. Heavy rainfall, thunderstorms, tropical lows developing and dissipating. It is what January typically looks like up there. The key is staying informed. Check the Bureau of Meteorology daily. They'll have the most up-to-date warnings and forecasts. If you're in a flood-prone area, know your triggers for action. Water rising, move to higher ground before you cut off. Simple preparation makes a massive difference. And if you down south, the east coast or southern states, you were largely unaffected by all this tropical activity. Different weather pattern entirely. The jet stream is keeping you protected from northern systems. That's the situation as it stands right now. Multiple tropical systems across northern Australia. Heavy rainfall for the top end this weekend. Flooding easing in northwestern Queensland. Potential for further development around Australia Day, but no immediate cyclone threats. I'll keep monitoring the models and the satellite imagery. If anything changes significantly, if a cyclone threat develops, if those rainfall forecasts shift, I'll update accordingly. For now, stay across the Bureau's warnings, be prepared. Don't panic. UV dealt with the wet season before.